Hi, thanks so much for coming. I just wanted to tell you how much I love having your son, Omausi, in my class. He's very persistent and hardworking. I've watched him several times when he is reading out loud, and if he comes across a word he doesn't know, he will work very hard and make several attempts to figure out what that word is before he asks for my help. He's also just very pleasant and thoughtful. I love having conversations with him. He tells me a lot about his dad and how his dad served a mission in Bulgaria and how he wants to go there. And he's also just so quick to do whatever I ask of him. So if I ask him to stop what he's doing to come do an assessment, he happily puts things down so that he can come and talk with me. And he'll just walk with me as we go to do assessments, and he's just so happy and such a joy to be around, and I love having him in my class. I just wanted to give you a general overview of the assessments I did. One of them is a running record, so this is where I have him read a few pages aloud from a book he's familiar with, and I take notes on the words that he read correctly or ones he struggled with. And I did 3 of these, and it helps me get an accurate idea of what reading level he's on, if a text is too difficult or too easy for him, and kind of what his strengths and weaknesses are with reading. Right after a running record, I do a retelling assessment for each one. So I have him tell me what he read about, and I ask him questions kind of about what he remembered. And this helps me see how he's comprehending and what he's reading. I also analyzed 2 of his writing samples that he had in his writing journal that we work on in class. And this just helps me to see how well he's doing with writing, what he may be struggling with, if he's writing in the correct tense, if he's writing on one subject, and using capitalization and punctuation, things like that in his writing. I also did another writing test, and it's kind of like a spelling test called the sentence dictation test. In this assessment, I read 2 sentences to Omausi, and I had him transcribe them for me. And this test helps me to see common spelling errors, and again, kind of his use of capitalization and punctuation in his writing. I also did a primary spelling inventory, which is a spelling test with increasingly difficult words, and I did this to see where he was in his understanding with phonics and his knowledge of how to spell words. And then finally, I did a Burke reading inventory, which is an interview that I do with him where I just ask him questions about his knowledge about reading, such as what he does when he comes across a word he doesn't know, who he thinks is a good reader, how would he teach someone to read, things like that. And that just helps me see kind of his understanding of reading and how he views himself as a reader. So there are a lot of things he's doing super well on. I'll just highlight a few of those. One of those is I noticed that after he read a few pages out loud to me during a running record, and after I did a retelling assessment with him, he could easily recount the main details in each story, and then when I asked him about specific details from the story, he was able to easily and correctly recall them. So this tells me he has great retelling and comprehension. He's really making sense of what he's reading. And one thing that we can do to kind of keep him on track with that, something you can do at home for that, is to have him kind of tell you what he's read after he reads a book to you. So you can ask him what happened, ask him questions about details in the stories, and this will help him with his comprehension. Another thing that I am going to do is work on different comprehension strategies to help him build his comprehension. Right now we're working on asking and answering questions, which helps him become more engaged in the text by having him keep reading to find answers. It also allows him to make predictions, draw inferences from the text, and go back and find answers to things that didn't make sense to him the first time. So both of these things are going to help him continue to be good in his comprehension. Another thing I noticed is that when I interviewed him with the Burke reading inventory, he answered a lot of questions, showing that he was very confident in his reading abilities and proud of his progress. For example, I asked him how he would rate himself as a reader on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being a terrific reader. Now, he only rated himself as a 2, but it sounded like it was because he was more aware of, like, as a good reader in overall, like as good of a reader as his dad, for example. And so He also told me after he said that he thinks he's doing good and that he's getting close to reading chapter books. So that just shows me that he's proud of the progress he's making and he's aware that he is doing well, which he really is. Some things we can do to help him still continue to be a confident reader is it's important to make sure he's reading books that are on his level. Because if he reads books that are either too easy or too hard, it can ruin his confidence and positive image of himself as a reader. So I will continue to be doing running records to find books that are at the right level for him and give him new books to read once those books become too easy for him. And then something you can do is with some of those books that I assign, or just with other books, what you can do is you can help him build his confidence by having him read the text a few times so he feels more confident and comfortable with it, and it sets him up for success so he has successful experiences reading. You can continue to build on his confidence by having him read stories more than once to you, so that will be great. And then one other thing that I noticed is that he is doing really well with his understanding of using the silent E to make a long vowel sound. So I noticed this while I was doing the spelling inventory. He spelled words such as hope, shine, and blade correctly, all with the silent E. It was also evident that he understood the concept of silent E as he used this to spell any word with a long vowel sound. So he spelled wait, W-A-T-E, and coach, C-O-C-H-E. Even though he spelled this wrong, this tells me that he remembered the rule for phonics with a silent E, and he was applying that. So I'm not concerned that he spelled it wrong. I think he's remembering what we've talked about in phonics, and that's great. So one thing we can do to help him with this strategy is I'll be teaching him more strategies in phonics, more different vowel patterns, different digraphs and diphthongs, so that he can use those when he is spelling. And something you can do is you can have him, you can give him steps to follow if he doesn't know how to spell a word. So first he can break the word into syllables, then say each syllable to himself and sound out the spelling in each syllable, and then think of rules or spelling vowels and endings that would apply to that. And then check to see if the word looks right, and then he can ask you, and you can tell him whether he did it correctly or not. And if he didn't, that's totally fine. He's still learning, and he's doing really good. There are a couple things that a couple things that I'm a little, that I think if he could improve on, his literacy skills would greatly improve overall. So as I was doing running records with him, I noticed that he would often skip words or even whole lines. So, for example, in one running record, he scored particularly low, an 88% in accuracy, which tells me that text should be too hard for him. It'd be at his frustration level. But this was because he skipped an entire line of text while reading. So it tells me that he's having a difficult time keeping track of where he is in the text, and I'm concerned that maybe he's focused on reading too quickly rather than reading accurately. So some things that we can do to help him is you can do a partner reading with him. This means that you or someone in your family can read with him at the same time in unison, and he'll be able to recognize if he's skipping words. And then I'll do something similar in the classroom. I'll do choral readings, both in his guided reading group and in his and as a class, where they will read along with me, and I can model how to read. I can remind them to keep track of where they are, things like that. That'll really help him. I also noticed that when I listen to him, the only strategy that he is using when he comes across a word he doesn't know is decoding the word by sounding it out. So, for example, during one of our running records, he struggled when he came across the word circled, and he spent a lot of time trying to sound out that word. But while sounding it out is a good strategy, several times it didn't really help him because many words in English don't follow the basic rules of phonics he was trying to use, and I had to tell him the word. So something that you can do to help him is you can kind of ask him what word he thinks it might be, if that word would make sense grammatically. if it sounds right, and that'll kind of help him use grammatical strategies when he decodes unfamiliar words. And I'll be doing a close procedure, so that's where I can cover up a word in a passage, and he has to use context clues to determine whether the word is right. Thanks so much for coming. I really love having him in the class, and I can tell that you are very involved in his education and you want him to be successful too, which is wonderful. Do you have any questions or concerns for me? Or is there anything you'd like to be aware of or that you'd like me to be aware of when I'm teaching him? Well, thanks so much for coming. I love having him in my class. He's such a hard worker and he's on the right track. I really admire his persistence in working on challenging assignments and activities, and he's just so pleasant to be around. And he's just really doing so well. He's really improving and he's working hard. I'm excited to implement the strategies we've discussed and see how he improves. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or concerns. Thanks.